So who won the war in Ukraine? Easy question, isn't it? Easy answer is Ukraine. But let me tell you, it's not really true in the larger scheme of things. The Russians obviously aren't winning. Putin did a major miscalculation, but we'll talk about that later. The Ukrainians had huge losses and their cities are destroyed, thousands of people killed. So they certainly didn't win. And neither did Joe Biden's America, let me tell you. In fact, if I tell you, if I ask you the question, in fact, who had the biggest strategic losses in this war, can you guess what the answer is? It is Joe Biden's America, even more than Russia. You know why? Well, I'll explain that to you. The purpose of my video is to highlight to you certain aspects of that conflict that no one is talking about, because I think for most people in the world, we keep hearing the Western media in a sort of propaganda way talking about this and that. Putin has got rich children and he lives in a life of luxury, he's a despot and whatever. All of that might well be true, but what I'm trying to say is there are certain things that are more important than how Putin is in his personal life. So we don't even know a lot of aspects of the personal lives of most politicians in the world. So that's definitely not the most exciting thing. I think what is lost in that entire narrative that we hear in the media is a sane voice which looks at it neutrally, and that's what I'm going to do. Now, I'm an Indian that lives in New Zealand, so as you can understand, I'm strategically and geopolitically and geographically well separated from the conflict. So it gives me a very good insight and a good perspective pragmatically of what is actually happening. So I would class this war and its result as the biggest strategic catastrophe that could have befallen America. I think the European allies in Europe, I think they haven't gained or lost anything. I think in the larger scheme of things, they're pretty inconsequential in terms of geopolitics. But I think they have been successful in hoodwinking Joe Biden's America into, putting the heft behind Ukraine. Now, that in itself is a lie, because Joe Biden, to most of the people in the world, appears to be a senile old man, helplessly shouting, hoping for someone to listen to him. But unfortunately and expectedly, no one really is listening to him. So he comes across as really weak and meek. But the unfortunate fact is, so does America because of him. So that aside, I think if we want to analyze the situation neutrally, what did America and the Western powers have to gain by getting Ukraine into the NATO fold? If I ask you that question, I think you'll find it really difficult to answer. And I think most people in the US and the European establishment would find it difficult to answer, because there is no logical answer to it. It's that stupid. It is that stupid. All these guys, politicians like Joe Biden, who clearly had better days in the past, are living 30 years back in the past. They're in a time machine. They have that same Cold War mentality that they have brought to the table. In Europe, which I'll explain in some of my other videos, is the epicenter of stupidity in this modern world. So it's going to make a very interesting video later on. I'll not get into the details of why I made that statement, but I definitely will in one of my future videos. So what has happened is that there's only one power that has actually gained from this entire episode, this human tragedy, and that is China. And if I ask you the question, who do you think is the biggest strategic and military opponent or enemy of the United States in particular, to a bit less of an extent for the Western European powers? So if I ask you that question, I think the easy answer is China. And what Joe Biden has done is that he has placed Russia firmly in the lap of China. That's what he has done. The Chinese must be really happy. They must be like, it's like Christmas come early for them, right? Santa Claus. Joe Biden does look like Santa Claus if you put on some fake beard. At least he's that old, if not anything else. So it's Christmas come early for the Chinese, because now their northern border with Russia is secure, right? And they have gained a huge amount of strategic depth in the north. What it also allows China is to slip under the radar and focus on its like activities in Iran and in Afghanistan. And what that will enable China to do is to expand its influence in Central Asia. They've already secured parts of the Indian Ocean. They have got a strong activity going on in the Pacific Islands and in Africa. So they've got a sea route as well as a land route into Central Asia now. And they have all done it free of cost. You know why? Because it's the stupid Joe Biden's America, not America, Joe Biden's America, that pulled the troops out of Afghanistan. So they did all the hard work. They sacrificed thousands of lives, trillions and trillions of dollars of taxpayers' money to clear out Afghanistan for the Taliban to come in and bring in China and bring him into their strategic Chinese influence without the Chinese having to spend any money or lives, right? So what it does is that Iran is also in the sphere of influence now. So they are going to dominate Central Asia. And what they will do, the Chinese, is that they'll also be emboldened to make bold statements about Taiwan, because the entire world has now seen that the emperor is really naked. He doesn't have any clothes. So they're not really afraid of what Joe Biden would say. But, I don't think the Chinese are that stupid that they will actually do anything in Taiwan. But they will make those statements, inflammatory statements, and keep everyone occupied. So they will use it as a decoy to expand their influence in Central Asia. Now, apart from that, if you look at the losses, you also need to look at the what I call opportunity cost in finance. So what is the opportunity cost that Joe Biden's America has lost? That, my friend, was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to turn the other way and create a good relationship with Russia. So if they had taken Russia in their fold and taken them into the confidence, suddenly what you'll find is that the Chinese would have been encircled by US influence, by the American influence. So Russia from the north, India from the south, you've got Philippines on this side, you've got Japan, and you've got Australia on the other side of the pond. So they would have strategically encircled China, and that would have been a once in, I would say, 100-year opportunity. Once in a 100-year opportunity to align with Russian strategic interests. Because fundamentally what you need to understand is that Russian strategic objectives and the American strategic objectives are not against each other. They are quite complementary. Russia wants influence in Slavic countries. Look, the Russians wouldn't be able to, I don't think it's feasible that they would have influence in non-Slavic Western European countries, even if they tried. And I'm pretty sure that they are not as stupid to try that anyway. So Americans and the European allies don't get anything at all by expanding NATO into Russia's underbelly, right? All they need to do is support each other, the two blocs, and they could have encircled their actual strategic opponent China. But with all this name calling and all these strategic blunders that have now been committed by both sides, I would say, the Russians and the Americans and Western allies, I don't think even in 100 years they'll get an opportunity to build mutual trust. And so I think this event is going to be the final coffin in terms of American influence in the Asian region. And I think no one is going to now come in the way of the Chinese century, as they call it. So that, my friends, is the biggest blunder that the Americans, or the Joe Biden's America has done. I would say this is even bigger than the Iraq war or the Serbian invasion. Just think about it.